Hello. Hello. Hello, my peoples. Um, so I'm here back just talking more about this amazing. Honestly, I think this topic is just so fascinating because the more that I just live on, the more it just becomes more amazing. The more that I live, the more that this idea just becomes more prevalent and amazing and fascinating. Um, in all its glory. It's called, of course, colonialism. Okay, I'm just so fascinated with this because it really has done a lot to people, I think more than they realize. It's more than just about the books. It is definitely more than just about, you know, what has taken place in history. It is more so about the minds of people, the generations of people, and individuals themselves. Um, it's really amazing. Where to start? Um, so in one of my videos, I talk about what is normal, what is weird, and what's considered mentally ill. And in that video, I explore briefly these concepts, all having to do with just um a citizen of people, basically colonial power. Most of it has to do with colonial power here. What we're talking about. My Wi-Fi just cut off for no apparent reason, quote unquote. Um, what we're talking about here is the fact that colonial power it it really is just a standardized system. It's a standardized belief system, and what I mean here exactly is that um a standardized let's talk about what a standardized system does. A standardized system literally just, how can I say this? Imposes imposes on the minds of the people who are operant of this nation or country. What I mean by that is let's kind of put ourselves in the shoes of those who actually went through these, the beginnings, I would say, the beginning of imperialism. I mean, it doesn't matter if you call it imperialism, colonialism, it's all the same. Um, but let's just take the US for example, since I'm most familiarized with with its history. And so when we imagine that you're, any person, you can be the person who is perpetrating it, you can be the person who is, um, being sought harm upon, it doesn't really matter. But let's kind of put ourselves in either of those people's shoes. Okay. Now that you're in their shoes, let's kind of walk through what's happening. Okay, so you have a group of people. Let's just take, hmm, since the history is actually kind of scattered for many, right? I mean, the way that they teach it is pretty scattered. Um, so let's just take what we most commonly all pretty much know or are aware of, Native Americans, or they call them indigenous people. I mean, I don't even know. They themselves don't call them. I don't even know what they call themselves. They don't even know. Um, but let's just take them for example. In particular, we're obviously going to be focusing on the light, the tan-skinned natives, as written in the books. Okay, so when we think about these people, And let's just kind of bring it, let's just literally just unpack the entire like the entire lesson, right? I mean, I was 2001, right? You guys learned about we learned about the the Trail of Tears. We learned about, that Native Americans were only tan, and that we learned briefly about some of the warriors, like um, Chief Manuelito, and um, of course, how can I forget Sitting Bull, right? Okay, we learned about those main historical figures who were the ones who, I guess, led their tribes to a peace treaty. Like they went to go sign the peace treaty. They also led the war um, that briefly took place before the um, extraction started. And this was in the West, right? Because as soon as they went westward of America, of North America, that's when the Trail of Tears happened, right? They said it was somewhere, I don't know if they said it was in Louisiana, but it definitely wasn't in Louisiana. It might have been actually. Um, but as far as I know, it's happened somewhere in the mid east side of America for sure. Okay, so right, let's put ourselves in these. So while we are on the topic of mental illness and weirdness and normal, let's look at the Native American tribes. They had their own government. They had their own systems. They had their own sovereign rules, way of life, way of living, their ideologies, right? Everything that I just said is considered a system. It's considered a system that that tribe, that group of people, those groups of people, they most definitely did follow those standards. So that system has its own standards in place, right? Native American systems had their own standards, right? And if we really want to talk about it, they had acknowledged that even the people in their tribes were not just male and female or man and woman, but they also described two-spirited individuals. In colonial ideology, we call those things mental illnesses, number one, and we call those things transgender, right? So do you see how when you are adhering to a certain system, the labels change, right? The ideology changes. The way that someone perceives certain people also changes. Because white Native American tribes, they didn't view two-spirited people as having mental ill. I'm sure that they didn't even recognize one another as mentally ill. There were no mental illnesses in these communities at all, actually. And so we have, so then why in colonial systems, what is meant by mentally ill? Well, when we just kind of compare both systems, right, as ideologies, uh, well, let's just look at the difference, right? We can kind of compare to narrow it down, and then we can find the answer. So colonial power, right? It's an ideology that really focuses on unification, unity, right? It focuses on um, centralization, right? Control, government, right? Um, it also focuses on um, those things. So those things are what makes colonial powerful. Centralization, big government, and all things of that nature. You guys know, right? When we talk about the Native American tribes, what made that system power? Well, obviously, it wasn't centralized, so it was decentralized. For the most part, it was decentralized. Power was sought in not unity in a sense of making everyone the same and one uniform as and making everyone follow one uniform idea like colonial power does. Unity was actually focused on through diversity. Oh, ooh. See, colonialism cannot thrive in diversity. And so whenever something or someone is diverse, the idea is to control it, is to experiment on it, and is to outcast it, to make it feel like it is alienated. And so that's what kind of the premise of slavery comes in at, because they couldn't understand people who were not like them. They couldn't understand diversity. And for some reason, they just took it upon themselves. Like they really took the responsibility on themselves just to be like, you know what? You're not like me at all. So you know what? I have to do something about this. I have to, you know what? I do have to change you. Yeah. I have to change you like a diaper. I have to change your diaper because something isn't right here. Right? But they didn't say it like that. No. No, they weren't like a helping hand in that way. No, 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 no. You know, it was more like it was a lot more extreme. Some would even say it may even been a factor of fear. Fear may have been involved there. Because we know that, when people don't understand something individually, they tend to run from it. They tend to have this fight or flight survival instinct kick in. And so that kind of sounds a lot more accurate as to why, well, the means of, abuse, and, things and such, right? That's one reason, one of many. Um, and so again, so now let's return back to the whole weird, normal, and mentally ill. So in colonialism, we know that diversity is not a thing. It cannot thrive, right? Um, it cannot thrive with difference. It can't thrive with people who are individual, who are unique, who are authentic. It just cannot. Um, and so the only way they could actually get their system to work is by taking that away from people, or at least not in a literal sense, but making them believe like it was something inherently wrong to have to be. You know what I mean? They made people feel like being authentic, being different was wrong. And they did this just by industrializing, right? They love to put labels on things, which then just gives it another um, way of industrialism. I mean, you make an industry of it now. And so now that industry becomes just a money making machine. Now the people become money making machines, right? Because you outcast a group of people, right? And you make them believe that who they are is wrong. And so then you make an industry, you build a building that says, hey, I can fix you. And then those people, if they really believe that, that something is wrong with them enough, then yes, they will go and pay money, spend their money on this industry, on fixing themselves. Um, so that's pretty much what that causes. And I think it's I find it so fascinating because it just tells you about the mind itself, right? It goes back to psychology. It goes back to metaphysics. And it goes back to all of those wonderful things that we as humans innately just, have. Because, I mean, can you really believe that, like, just by someone else telling you, hey, that's wrong, you are now like, what? That's wrong? Like, I think you just believe it. You're just like, yeah, I guess maybe it is. Like, uh, I just think it's really, really fascinating, guys. And so it's really nothing to, badger or get amped up about, really. It is what it is. But I just like to, compare these different systems. Um, so let's kind of go back to the Native American side of things, or the indigenous side of things, whatever you want to call it. Indigenous Native American people, their rules, regulations were closely aligned to that of nature. Obviously, they loved the land for as it was. They would not have been building buildings, not constructing these big buildings and chopping down trees and, destroying Mother Nature, Mother Earth for all that she is in her glory. No, 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 no. They wouldn't have done that. So their rules were a little bit different, right? They loved diversity. As a matter of fact, as diverse nature is, so were their people. And they loved that. They thrived on that because it genuinely aligned with nature, right? And so, you know, sometimes what's funny, and this is kind of like an after effect of, getting everyone to kind of follow along, follow along. Yeah, remind me of school, follow along and read whatever the fucking audiobook said. Anyway, what's funny is the aftermath of, diversity of getting people to adhere or trying getting people to walk in a straight. It's like trying to like get ants to walk in a straight line uniformly. Like you can't guide ants to do what it is you want to do. Not even the queen bee is surveying their fucking colony. Like they literally just are doing what they're doing. So I mean, there's too many factors in nature that literally just proves that this system is it's just a little bit flawed. I think that with the right adjustments, there could be major improvements, and it could actually work because I mean, who wants to get rid of unification, right? It's a great thing. But when it's on the premise of, exploitation of, many people, um, then it doesn't actually work. So anyway, the aftermath, like I said, is really funny because getting people to adhere to this system and follow it to like a T, and then you see somebody else who's probably like you probably would like, for example, like colonialism, right? They loved white people. They loved the lighter skinned. They love light skinned. They love it. They loved the light, despite all of the dark tragedies they had to go through to whatever, a little bit of hypocrisy right there, but it, God will repent their sins, right? Um, um, they love the light. And so what happens when one of their kind, we'll say that, right? Because they love to, outcast, other. people of color unless you looked. You appeared pretty close to them. So one of their kind, what happens when one of their kind is actually diverse? Like what happens, right? Well, I mean, fortunately, it has happened and it was recorded in history. However, what they didn't do was actually label the diverse of, I guess we would call them diverse comrade. They didn't label the diverse comrade as mentally ill or even mentally unstable. They saw that this person has a genius. But it's funny, when it's maybe a little bit of a darker complexity. Now it's like, oh my gosh, this person needs help. Wow, they need to go see somebody. This is not, I don't get it, guys. It doesn't make any sense. Um, um, okay. Well, I would love to take the two, greatest historical figures of all time, at least in the US, of course, right? Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Okay, these two individuals, they were both of the same complexity, and yet Edison was considered a normal man. He had no mental illnesses, he had no mental anything. He was just so normal. He he followed that colonial standard to a T. He did not divert from it at all, whatsoever. Some would even say, there was something pulling at his strings. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess that's just what happens when you really get someone to believe in that, what they're doing is actually for right cause, and they actually belong here, right? Mr. Edison, right? Mr. Edison. And then we had Nikola Tesla. Mr. Tesla. He was of the same complexity, and yet he was so different. He was so different. His mind didn't operate like the normal people. His mind didn't operate like everyone else. Although we were all born under the same system, under the same stars. Under, I mean, it's funny when I say that system word. I have to really emphasize colonial system because for some reason, even though we're all born underneath the same sun, stars, moon, planetaries, the same earth, um, for some reason it's just like the system is the only thing that really like just throws all that shit away. Even though we look up and we all see the same stars, we all see the same fucking everything, it just goes away for some reason because people really, they really believe in that unity. It's unity. We needed it before because before we didn't have unity. Now with this power we have unity. Um, as if it wasn't prevalent enough. I mean, okay. So, anyways, yeah, he was very different. And Edison, oh my gosh, Edison took a longing for this man. He was like, what does he have that I do not? Why could I not be this diverse, just indulged in my own creation like Tesla was? He really, really took inspiration from this man. And Edison, as not ambiguous, but ambitious as he was, he decided he would take that ambition and do the exact same thing that Nikola Tesla was doing. Wow. Oh my gosh. He wanted it so bad. He was like, you know what? I'm so inspired. I'm going to do the exact same thing that Nikola Tesla's doing. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, as he started to do it, he started to go, he started studying, he started, doing his own thing. But then, like, I don't know, something like flipped in his little mind. I don't want to, disrespect, but his mind. Um, Something flipped in it because as he began to travel down his journey, his passion, it was his passion. Um, he found that he wasn't actually studying what he was passionate about. He wasn't actually putting as much time and effort into studying. What was it? What did they even study? Electricity, power, right? He wasn't spending as much time on figuring out how to invent power and things of that nature. He really found himself. He really found himself studying more of Nikola Tesla than his actual creative endeavors. And so this is kind of what happens, right? When you have two people underneath the same power who are socially accepted, right, by this colonial system, right? They are socially accepted. The system has standards, so the social classes exist, and so the light-skinned people were socially acceptable. That you couldn't trap any diverse white person, right? There wasn't a rule made for that. No, 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 no. So Edison had nowhere to go. He was like, this is preposterous. There were not supposed to be diverse people. They weren't supposed to be my color at least. So why is this? Instead, he decided to enter into competition with this man, Tesla. Yeah, Tesla had no clue, by the way. Tesla was in his own world. He did not give two fucks about this man, Edison. He was just doing what he loved most, which was innovation, discovering more about nature, about through science, right? And so that was his nature. He aligned with nature, even though he was born socially acceptable under, I guess, colonial power. And of course, it didn't really matter because the colonial power didn't have a rule saying, hey, you can be white and diverse. They didn't have a rule and say you couldn't. So, a long story short, guys, um, Edison just grew obsessed with Tesla. He ended up getting into a race with him. He started to just, take little jabs because he knew he was more socially inept. Look, I mean, when I say that, I mean like he was normal, right? Like since he cared more about he cared more about like publicity type power instead of like innovative discovery type power like Tesla did. And because of that, he was able to use that to his advantage. So like no one really bat an eye when Edison was just like somehow like coming up with all these different inventions. They're like, wow, this man, how does he do it? Like he just, like they didn't really like. They're like, oh wow, he's white, so yeah, he must know what he's talking about. I just think that's so funny. Um, so yeah, they didn't really question anything. They just went along with it. I mean, colonialism made them they made sheeps. They did make followers. They really did make followers, and people did subscribe to this mindset. They did. Um, so you can yeah, yeah. But so he just started to come out with all these different inventions, and then Tesla kind of caught on. It was like, why is everything that I'm doing being posted publicly, but under someone else's name? What's going on? But I'm sure he didn't really care in the end because, you know, he came to found out, that nature was just it was endless discovery. There was always something new to discover, and he didn't have time to worry about whatever Edison was doing. But after some time, he did eventually enter this race and started to, come out with his own inventions publicly. But by then, Edison was already like hyped up for his amazing inventions anyway. So then people were like, "Who's this guy? Tesla? What?" And then but then they were like, "Oh wait, he kind of sounds like him, or he's actually kind of more inventive than this man." So you know what I mean? Start picking sides. Kind of like football, sports and shit like that, right? So there was this, at first it was an invisible competition Tes between basically Edison. I don't like to say it was between both of them because Edison was the one just racing this guy in mind. But then Tesla, as he caught on, he then just joined the race. So then, it wasn't like a physical feud, but it was more of like just kind of like a public, who could I guess publish the most inventions more and who could get the most likes. I mean, pretty much like it's pretty much um it's like some Instagram war or some shit. It was really just didn't I don't know. I guess that was important. I guess that's important for this system, right? The system is just kind of that shallow in a sense, Um, and so because of that, I guess, Tesla, he just did what he did until he dropped. That's it. He stayed in his hotel. He had this really specific eating habits, and it was pretty healthy. It wasn't like everybody else. So he was a diverse person. He wasn't what was considered normal, right? But he didn't get the privilege, I suppose, to have the label attached to him. So he was famed for it. He was remembered by it, he was somewhat accurately presented, right? And as you notice, like he was pretty stable, right? Despite his diverse and what some people would probably consider weird habits, diverse patterns, basically. Unpredictable is pretty much what weirdness means. You're unpredictable. Why can I not, predict your next move? Why is everything that you say, doesn't really align with how I'm thinking? What's going on? You're different. You're weird. Yeah. Um, because of that, right? He was he just considered doing what he loved. And then he lived I would say he probably lived a great life, you know. Um Edison on the other hand, he was just too obsessed with this man. It almost seemed a little, I hate, homosexual. Mm, somewhat. I mean, that's kind of the def. I mean, if you were really, if you were really, I'm not saying the system makes homosexual men, but ugh, I mean, anyways, we're gonna turn a blind eye on that one there. Um, yeah, we're just gonna face the other way on that one, eh? I mean, um, so yeah, I mean, guys, when it comes to colonialism, it's just the power that I would say the greatest thing that it has done it was like the great to me it's like the greatest scientific experiment ever. Like yeah, it may have hurt a lot of people and yeah, the tragedies and stuff, but it really it really just there's so much to learn from it, guys. Learn by it. Like it started off as a flawed system, but every single day it just slightly adjusts. And, I mean, for the past what, since the 20th century, I would say, the financial monetary system, they've done that. They've made adjustments. They you know, quantitative easing and tightening every so, every 5, 10 years, and then I find a reset, right? I mean, those are, you know, that's helping. That I mean, that was kind of helping. I mean I mean, maybe not the citizens, but it was helping the rich get richer. It was helping them. I mean, guys, right? You guys had a way to get rich, right? You guys just had to kind of figure it out for yourselves. Like they didn't tell you guys how to do it, but if you did find out, you would get rich, guys. So I mean, that's that's good. Until then, you have to kind of suffer. Yeah, but that's the trade-off. We're all one. We're all unified, guys. It's hierarchy, guys. It's how life's supposed to be. Believe us. Believe. Yeah. Um. Anyways, like we'll just ignore the fact that the indigenous people had nothing like that. None of their people were suffering um from anything like that. And they were very, power. You hear the stories of Native American people talking about the great histories and the ancient teachings and practices of their ancestry, the stories that they have told about their people. They, they didn't they wouldn't consider their people ever having to suffer, and instead they thrived. Oh, but they didn't have, like, they didn't have money. They didn't have a bed to sleep in. Um, well, I mean, if we talk about the indigenous people who were living in the West, sure, we only pay attention to them, sure. But if we, but they didn't teach about the other indigenous people who lived you know, in the east side of America. Um, Maybe because they were darker skinned. I don't know, guys. Who knows? This the system is just so silly. They have methods to this, right? There's hope, guys. You know, and that's what it's meant for, right? Um, you guys just keep hoping and holding on that something, better is gonna happen. Maybe God will come save you. Um, yeah, yeah. Anyways, it's been a pleasure um speaking about this topic here. So I just, I take what I if you listened all the way through, and much, you know, thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you laughed a little bit, or you kind of connected some dots, or maybe you found yourself in one of these stories I've told here. They're all stories. They're all stories. Um, so I mean, if you did, guys, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the stories, the way I told the stories, let me know with the like. Doesn't hurt. Um, I'm part of this power too, guys. Yeah, who gets the most likes, I guess. I'm Jake. I don't. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Okay, that's all I have to say. Um, but yeah, I'm off this thing, and I will see you when I see you. Okay. Um, Peace.